This is the last long work published during Mark Twain's lifetime. Maybe that's Dog Bequest.
And here.
Get to the point.
How's that?
Little tilt.
Can you hear me?
Better.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Among phrases now practically synonyms are the pursuit of happiness and the American dream. The common references for the first term are to Thomas Jefferson replacing the third item in John Locke's Life, Liberty, and Property, and its subsequent acceptance by courts and others, but it generally seizes imaginations as a glittering generality, too general or too individualized to have any practical substantive meaning, adding a sense of undefined idealism to the unalienable rights the Declaration contains. The concept merged with the American dream long before historian James Truslow Adams coined that phrase in 1931. The pursuit is to culminate in the dream as the expected fulfillment of this idealism. A contrary view is, and you've probably heard this, the U.S. Constitution does not guarantee happiness, only the pursuit of it, as wrongly attributed to Benjamin Franklin as happiness is to the Constitution. Americans typically relate the phrase, the dream, and themselves to the ambiguous designation middle class. For centuries, that seeming step between poor and prosperous did not exist. So its emergence became both dream and means, especially in America, envisioned as a place to move upward. Early to late in his career, Mark Twain, whom Robert Weir says epitomized middle-class attitudes, wrote stories of people reaching beyond that status but not finding it satisfactory. Exemplifying these attitudes is the married middle-class couple in his novelette, The $30,000 Bequest, in 1904. James Wilson has observed, since the pursuit of riches is an integral part of our national myth, the story questions certain fundamental values of American life. In it, Twain confronts and contradicts cherished American ethos, the pursuit, the dream, and the middle class, set in another revered concept, the small town. The setting of such stories is typically a small Midwestern town, and as such, mythically linked to the pursuit of happiness as the repository of traditional American values and virtues, where established values would survive and also thrive, a place of positive possibilities. For the American dream, as representing what Americans thought they were, what they sometimes pretended, to themselves as well as others, they wanted to be. A place with fewer hindrances to becoming what and who one desired. For the middle class, as an abstract symbol of all things good, pure, and right about American society, with the church and its Sunday school squarely at its center. And a place demonstrating the beliefs and the social power of middle-class society. Lewis Budd says, it was the middle-class norm that shaped the $30,000 bequest. If, as Anthony Hilford avers, the basic civilization of America was middle class, the values, virtues, and power were also, as were its flaws. The narrator immediately informs readers that Lakeside, in the $30,000 bequest, was a little town in the West, much like other towns in the West and South, where each of the Protestant churches was represented. As the second sentence sets forth a theme of extraordinary expectations, that is the American dream, in that these churches in a town of 5,000 to 6,000 people have been built to accommodate 35,000 congregants. The third sentence asserts its small townish attitudes or beliefs about them. Rank was unknown in Lakeside. Everybody knew everybody and his dog. And a sociable friendliness was the prevailing attitude. But it cast doubt that rank was unknown by adding unconfessed anyway. Knowing everybody, people in small towns, overtly democratic, say all are equal, but secretly know who ranks above and below them. The projected invisible congregations may be viewed as hopeful, optimistic, or unrealistic, adjectives that describe the attitudes and situations that envelop the primary family in this story. But another adjective occurs 4 times in the early description of the Foster family. Significantly, the word appears immediately before the narrator, having given their background, says, "It is at this point that this history begins. That history is of their upward journey that ultimately brings them down." The word is happy. She was a pleased and happy woman, happy in her husband, happy in her children, and the husband and children were happy in her. In their pursuit of happiness, they do not realize that they already have it. The close proximity of the repetition emphasizes what will later be their loss, and placed before the history of their pursuit begins, the word suggests their unnecessary goal, enhanced happiness. The Fosters are presented as a typical middle-class couple, that is, hardworking, diligent, conscientious, ambitious, debt-free, living in a pretty and comfortable home with their 2 children, a money cushion, and other property and investments that bring income. Additional middle-class characteristics of theirs are concerned with social status, possession of discretionary income, and husband Saladin in a white-collar occupation, with much of the credit for extras due to wife Electra, excuse me, who cares for the home and, significantly, finances. Later, during their pursuit, they are, on the surface, still regarded as plodding, diligent, careful, practical, economical. The townspeople believe Saladin is a capable businessman who deserves his position as the only high-salaried bookkeeper in town, where he has worked in its main store since he married at age 21, 14 years ago. Their extended pursuit begins after the 14 years of his job and their marriage. The marriage, his job, her investing, and their upward movement and initial pursuit of happiness are parallel. His starting salary of $400 a year had encouragingly risen $100 for each of the first 4 years. But although his abilities and efforts had not decreased, his wages had for the last 10 years remained at $800. Like other middle-class families, the Fosters remain in the middle. It is, they said, a handsome figure indeed, and everybody conceded that he was worth it. However, with his upward mobility stalled, Foster's later reactions to their new apparent opportunities informed that he had felt bogged down and yearned for tangible acknowledgement of his dedication and fulfillment of higher ambitions. Noting the connection of the middle class and upward mobility, Elizabeth Jacobs comments, "Low levels of upward social mobility and high levels of economic inequality pose a serious challenge to the American dream." Saladin's deficit of raises is somewhat offset by Electra's efforts. Although only 19 when she married, she was an astute businesswoman who immediately spent all she had, $25, $15 more than Saladin's total savings of $10, on an acre of land, placed a garden on it, and persuaded a neighbor to sharecrop it for 100% profit in a year. That, as a teenager, she had more than Saladin at 21, speaks to her superior economic shrewdness, as does her yearly banking of a portion of his income that enabled them to build and furnish a home, to be debt-free, to invest several $100s that earned income, to buy more land, and through practical investments to obtain an independent income of $100 a year. Despite achieving typical goals of the pursuit of happiness, the American dream, and of the middle class, a comfortable home, additional land, an amicable family, steady employment, a unique community standing, admiration and respect of neighbors, reliable income and savings, the Fosters realize they desire more. This desire results from 2 factors. Superficially sensible, they are also covertly dreamy, or as Mark Twain equates, romantic, and therefore unrealistic. But the catalytic factor is Uncle Tilbury's bequest. Into this middle-class Eden, to this Adam and Eve, Tilbury drops bidden fruit. He is blunt and does not conceal his intent. A distant relative who has shunned them and avoided contact, Tilbury, described as sour and crusty, writes to say his death is imminent and he should leave Saladin $30,000 cash, not for love, but because money had given him most of his troubles and exasperations, and he wished to place it where it will continue its malignant work. 3 points, however, suggest caution, which the Fosters do not heed. Tilbury is reputed well off. He says he should leave Saladin the money, not that he would. And he stipulates that the Fosters not mention the gift in any way, inquire about his impending death by any means, or attend his funeral. Why? He has no money and dies soon after writing them. His prompt death limits news of it. They spend years pursuing happiness, not knowing its promised source is dead. The Fosters are not hypocrites, yet they are what they appear to be. They live their lives as people observe them, but they also have an unobserved life. After hours and in the privacy of their home, they put the plotting world away and lived in another and a fairer, reading romances to each other, dreaming dreams. Mentally hobnogging with royalty. Before Tilbury's interference, they are merely private dabblers in romance. Tilbury provides what the Fosters grasp as a concrete outlet for their dreams. Saladin and Electra are not initially corrupt, but they carry the seeds of their own corruptness. They're at one point innocent and harmless secret life. The fruit is bidden because they subconsciously desired a means to make their dreams real. This concealed existence complements their obedience of Tilbury's proviso to be silent as it reinforces their hidden life. In effect, he has prophetically warned them not to be thankful. Indeed, Elizabeth McMahon believes the $30,000 bequest sounds a stern warning against the insidious acquisitive values which were then and still remain embodied in the great American dream of upward mobility. One meaning of foster is to cling to in one's mind. The Fosters allow their dream notions to overwhelm their life and their dream selves to replace their real selves. As Frederick Bush writes, and as their unsexing pet names for each other suggest, Alec, that is Electra, and Sally, Saladin, create themselves. They are the American story, enacting as they do the self-generating enfleshment of the dream about going from poverty to powerful wealth. Janet Yaros Lee states that gender ambiguity attributes equal responsibility to husband and wife. Not only do the pet names seem to reverse the sexes and the sexual relationships of the Fosters, but they also alter the typical middle-class image of a married couple. She handles the money and plans the family future. This switch by the author directs attention to a disruption of the usual middle-class sexual roles and continues the theme of reversed expectations. The unsexing represents that the obsessiveness that grips them is not limited to one sex. Greed does not sexually discriminate. Ironically, with the prospect of the bequest, they invert another meaning of their surname when they treat their children as though they're not their own, neglecting their foster children to plan for the inheritance. Tilbury has fostered what appears positive, but is actually the instigator of discord and disillusionment, the opposite of what is envisioned by the American dream or its pursuit. They reap imaginary gains from Alec's imaginary investments, but ultimately suffer devastating imaginary losses. Both are real to them. As Wilson opines, money is not a blessing providing access to an enhanced life, but a curse that saps a soul's vitality and devastates human relationships. That curse jolts every aspect of their middle-class existence and distorts the dreams of prosperity they pursue, whose fulfillment they believe will ensure happiness. Sally and Alex are altered. An immediate result is disruption of daily life and work. Although Sally and Alex swear not to reveal knowledge of the bequest or even the appearance that they were disobediently thankful, Sally cannot concentrate on his bookkeeping or Alex on her household activities. For both were dreaming. With $30,000 that gave all day long in both minds, all day long, Alex is planning how to invest it, Sally is planning how to spend it. Covertly eager for Tilbury's death, they do subscribe to a weekly newspaper, scan obituaries. Tilbury dies promptly, but between editions. When an interruption for ice cream in the newsroom and an accidental displacement of type, 2 bumps on the road to happiness, result in the death notice missing print. Sally pleads with Alex. We've always worked so hard and been so scrimped, and now that we are rich, it seems this shift from past to present tense reveals their belief that the money is in hand. Also inherited of the middle-class work ethic, the Fosters fail to realize and heed contemporary multimillionaire Andrew Carnegie's warning that inheriting vast wealth was a disservice to one's heirs because financial comfort is a disservice to work and realize one's full potential. In a desire to move up in society, they acquire from their imagined higher status an arrogance toward the ethic and condescension to the laboring class. We would make a plunge at the 400 and pull in some an ancient lineage, venerable, holy, inevitable, mellow with antiquity of 150 years, unsmirched by a day's work. The word work occurs 14 times in the story, only the latter 2 times in reference to the work ethic. 6 times referring to Alex working her investments, thrice inconsequentially, and 3 references to the negative effects of the bequest. It will continue its malignant work. The proportion of its usage in the story places emphasis on their acquisition and eventual loss of imaginary money. That is, on a small-town, white-collar couple in pursuit of a prosperity they fancy will bring them contentment, the American dream of betterment, upward mobility. Has the assumed virtue of the work ethics been subverted? The work ethic had brought them a happiness they did not fully appreciate, but the snobbish side effect assumed during exaggerated striving for advanced status is another factor blinding them to reality. Although they plod through their daily routines, they become oblivious to all else. They are involved in not only the constant attempt to deceive others, but far worse, the continuous unconscious process of self-deception. Sally and Alec weaken the nuclear family and middle-class concepts of advancement. Since the nuclear group of husband, wife, and dependent children constitutes the primary family and common household and unit throughout our society, their actions, motivated by greed and empty dreams, ultimately damage society as a whole. The word love appears only once in the story, and that negatively, as Tilbury bequeaths $586,000 in 20th century dollars, not for love, but for spite. Forms of kiss occur 4 times, twice referring to the vacancy of kisses bestowed on their children, and twice as kisses of gratitude, not truly of love. Sally bestows on Alex when she says he may spend a portion of their empty fortune. Although the narrator says Sally is the idol of her deathless worship, No stronger word than affection describes the emotional relationships of the family. Fondness more than intimacy. Sally links and equates affection with admiration of Alex's financial acumen rather than passion for her. He beamed his old-time admiration and affection upon her, we're told. Here referring to their beginnings together. Worship and admiration are not love. Their marriage, growth as a family, financial management, middle-class notions of upward mobility, and concepts of sought happiness again connect and overlap. Love is neglected for a pursuit of happiness. References to being happy occur more than those to other emotions, but although the word happy appears 15 times from chapter 1 to the end of the final chapter, happiness, the state of being happy, never does. Its physical absence is appropriate to its thematic absence. True happiness is in the past. The happy years sprang to Sally's eyes, poignantly happy. We threw away our sweet and simple and happy life. As Wilson comments, the Eden they've created fails to satisfy. True love and true happiness have been displaced by pursuit of a falsehood. Now, idealistically and spiritually drained, they had been happy. As the pursuit intensified, delusion grew and happiness diminished. The closer its attainment, the nearer its loss. Thank you.